All right, so over the last couple of days, we have seen just absolute devastation over in Maui, Hawaii, as they were hit with some pretty historic wildfires that are giving us yet another glimpse in terms of our future as we continue to refuse to meaningfully address climate change. So, here to start us off from the AP, they say Maui surveys the burned wreckage caused by the deadliest U.S. wildfire in years. So, we're going to get to a little bit of the details here in terms of, what potentially caused this, how this all unfolded, what the consequences are, and then I'm going to show you guys some visuals in terms of what this actually looked like on the ground. It was absolutely insane. So they start off here saying that the search of the wildfire wreckage on the Hawaiian island of Maui on Thursday revealed a wasteland of burned out homes and obliterated communities as firefighters battled the stubborn blaze that has already claimed 36 lives, making it the deadliest in the U.S. in recent years. They say it was fueled by a dry summer and strong winds from a passing hurricane. Now, this hurricane was apparently miles and miles, dozens of miles away, so it wasn't like this was just coming directly, close to this island, but still, those winds were enough to give these fires more and more fuel. And of course, these things like a dry summer, stronger winds, things like that are obviously going to be more and more impactful as, again, climate change continues to worsen. But they say the fire started on Tuesday and took the island by surprise, racing through parched growth and neighborhoods in the historic town of Lahaina, a tourist destination that dates to the 1700s and is the biggest community on the island's west side. And I actually believe that this is the location of where the original sort of capital was for the Kingdom of Hawaii before the United States went in and toppled that government. So obviously a lot of history here that has been just decimated as a part of this, which obviously just adds to the tragedy of the situation on top of the people who lost their lives. But they say Maui County said late Wednesday that at least 36 people had died, making it the deadliest U.S. wildfire since the 2018 Camp Fire in California, which killed at least 85 people and laid waste to the town of Paradise. They say the Hawaii toll could rise, though, as rescuers reach parts of the island that had been unreachable due to the ongoing fires or obstructions. An official said earlier Wednesday that 271 structures had been damaged or destroyed and that dozens of people had been injured. They say the flames left some people with mere minutes to act and led some to flee into the ocean. They say a Lahaina man, Bosco Bay, posted a video on Facebook from Tuesday night that showed fire burning nearly every building on a street as sirens blared and spark-filled winds roared by. Bay, who said that he was one of the last people to leave the town, was evacuated to the island's main airport and was waiting to be allowed to return to his home. So, we have people who are literally having to jump into the ocean, physically leave the land because of how catastrophic these fires were, right? And so just to give you a little bit of a visual perspective on this, as pointed out here by Kanekawa the Great, they say before and after photographs of the fire damage in Lahaina, Maui, absolutely devastating. And this is the before right here. It looks like honestly a beautiful place there. And then this is what it looks like now. Just completely and utterly destroyed, right? Another little glimpse there in terms of what this looked like on the ground as well. In the same spot, it looks like. Again, just catastrophic. We also have some videos here of people posted online. This one was of this girl doing basically a drive-by and showing some of the ongoing fires. Let's just go ahead and watch this real quick. So, yeah, Jesus Christ, man. We have another one here just to give you one more video perspective in terms of the aftermath of this. What do you even say about this? It looks like this was just a war zone. This is similar to some of the pictures that I see coming out of Ukraine after, a place has just been bombed into oblivion. It looks that bad, right? So that's a little visual perspective. Now, obviously, I want to tie this into the broader conversation about climate change. And, it's not even just like, oh, this one specific fire was started because of climate change. No, it's just that we have to understand the tendencies that are going to get increasingly worse as we continue into the future with climate change not not being meaningfully addressed with us not aggressively transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. So it's basically more just about we're going to have, increased of, drying vegetation that is going to lead to them being able to, spread fires more quickly. We are going to have, just drier climates generally, droughts that are more long lasting than they otherwise would have been. Again, stronger winds from things like hurricanes that are also becoming more severe and more frequent. I mean, all of these things compiling on top of each other, and we are going to see events like this more and more often. So they say here from NC State, climate change is making wildfires worse. Here's how. So they say large-scale wildfires like the August Complex Fire and the Dixie Fire are becoming increasingly common in the United States as climate change accelerates. In fact, since 2000, an annual average of 70,072 wildfires have burned an annual average of 7 million acres across the country. That's more than double the annual average of 3.3 million acres burned in the 1990s, when a greater number of fires occurred annually. Okay, so you see what they're saying here, right? Even though in the 90s we actually had more fires, like in a total number, the fires that we're having now are worse because they are so much larger, because they're able to spread easier because of all of these other things that I just mentioned. So they say that Robert Scheller, a professor of forestry and environmental resources at NC State's College of Natural Resources, said that greenhouse gas emissions continue to drive changes in the climate, contributing to warmer than average surface temperatures and shifting precipitation patterns, trends that are expected to increase the frequency, intensity, and duration of wildfires across the U.S. He said, quote, "Climate change is creating the perfect conditions for larger, more intense wildfires," said Scheller, who uses geospatial analytics to examine the effects of climate change and human activities on long-term landscape health. He says, "We're already seeing fires that we didn't expect to see until 2080. All right, they say as of 2021, the average surface temperature of the U.S. was roughly 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That figure is projected to rise by 3 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100, resulting in more frequent and intense heat waves. Simultaneously, some regions are expected to experience less rainfall than usual. They say these conditions will worsen droughts, making landscapes across the country more flammable. They say drought conditions reduce the amount of moisture in the vegetation. The amount of moisture in the vegetation then determines how easily it will ignite when it's exposed to heat, whether it's from lightning or from an unattended campfire or some other cause. And with low moisture, vegetation becomes more flammable because the heat doesn't have to remove as much water to generate combustion, the series of chemical reactions that produce fire." So, I mean, again, this is what we are going to be seeing more and more and more. We just saw those massive Canadian wildfires. I'm literally living in Washington, D.C. right now, right? Halfway down the East Coast, and we were having advisories. I was getting notifications on my phone saying you should be staying indoors right now because of how bad the air quality was from goddamn wildfires in Canada. Okay, so I mean, these are the kinds of things. This is going to have, effects for millions and millions and millions of people. Obviously, you feel for the people in Maui who just were directly affected by this, who lost their homes, who lost their businesses and all of that stuff, lost their lives in the cases of apparently dozens and dozens of people. But then you also have these tangential effects where this is going to have effects in terms of our, consistency for food supplies. We have massive swaths of the U.S. that are going through these widespread droughts. California and a lot of these western states in the United States are starting to have water issues because a lot of our previous sources for water are being used up by human beings, also by corporations that are wasting our water. Well, there was also that crazy story that I covered of Arizona selling off some of their water to the Saudis. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we're talking about here. We're talking about more increased severity and frequency of these kinds of wildfires and other storms as well. We're talking about a whole host of other consequences of people having to migrate away from places that are no longer habitable. I was just covering the stories from Arizona as well, in Phoenix, where they had a period for the entire month of July that was over 100 degrees. And, people were filling up the ICUs in Phoenix, Arizona, because they were falling on the ground and the ground was burning their skin. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. So obviously, I mean, these kinds of consequences are not going anywhere. They're only going to accelerate from here. If there was one tiny silver lining that you could maybe argue, it would be that, these kinds of things happening with the frequency that they are right now, maybe that will wake more people people up to, understand the severity of the situation. And then maybe that will put a lot of pressure on our systems, on our politicians to actually do something about it. But at the same time, even the Democratic Party, right? Obviously, we have people like Bernie Sanders that are in favor of things like the Green New Deal. That's really what's necessary at the bare minimum to actually address this issue, right? But then we have like the Democratic establishment led by somebody like Joe Biden, who's bragging about this so-called historic climate investment, which, by the way, as a reminder, was largely dictated legislatively by a literal fossil fuel millionaire coal baron named Joe Manchin from West Virginia when they were writing that climate legislation. And then you look at it and it's like $370 billion over the next 10 years, right? I mean, we're talking about $37 billion a year to address climate change, right? That's what Joe Biden was bragging about as some new historic investment. We spend nearly $1 trillion on just the military. And oh, by the way, the US military is polluting more than most countries on the face of the planet. So, I mean, it's a completely insane situation. We keep seeing these kinds of tragedies happening, and it just seems like the needle is not being moved necessarily in terms of like actually accomplishing some of the goals that scientists and experts on this are saying that we need to accomplish. But, there you have it. Obviously, again, you feel for the people in Maui, you feel for the people, all across the world that are suffering from these consequences. And we need to wake up and we need to actually meaningfully do some shit about this.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying